This is the extraordinary story of John Tawell, whose claim to fame that he was the first criminal to be caught by the newly invented telegraph, proving how useful it could be for different applications, and he was the first to flee the scene of the crime by train. Tawell was born in Beccles in Norfolk in 1784 and started out at the age of 14 working in a draper's shop in London, which was owned by a Quaker widow, who persuaded him to attend meetings held by the Quakers, who were a strict religious society. At the age of 22, he seduced a servant called Mary Freeman, and when she became pregnant, the couple married, and they eventually had 2 children. This was much to the disapproval of the Quaker community, of which he was a member. He was eventually disowned by them as a result of his relationship with a non-Quaker woman. He went on to work in a chemist in Cheapside, where he was quick to learn the pharmacy business. In 1814, he was charged with forging banknotes from the Uxbridge Bank, which was potentially a capital offence. Luckily for him, the Quaker-owned bank was opposed to the death penalty, and being mindful of a potential scandal, negotiated for Tawell to be allowed to plead guilty to a lesser offence. The result was that his sentence was commuted to 14 years transportation to Australia and the penal colony of Sydney. For a few years he worked his sentence on coal ships around the Australian coast, and his skills with medicines were identified, and he was given a job in a convict hospital. He later obtained work as a clerk to Isaac Wood of the Sydney Academy, who was impressed with his knowledge and faith. Wood petitioned the governor for Tawell's pardon, which was granted in 1820. Now a free man, Tawell prospered, having opened the colony's first pharmacy, as well as pursuing a number of other business ventures. Although he had no formal pharmaceutical training or qualifications, the local medical board authorised him to dispense medicines and chemicals. With this accreditation, the business boomed, and the shop had to move to larger premises. His family finally rejoined him in Sydney in 1823, and Tawell set about rehabilitating his reputation and became influential in setting up the first Quaker community in Australia, as well as engaging in various philanthropic activities. He seemed to have been well respected and dressed as a Quaker. In 1837, he donated the first Friends Meeting House in Sydney. He made a public display of his temperance by pouring casks of gin and rum into the sea. Despite his apparent piety, he was never fully accepted by the Quakers, possibly because of his criminal past and the fact that prior to his family arriving from England, he had kept a mistress. In 1838, the family returned to London. Mary, his wife, who had been suffering from tuberculosis, died at the end of the year. Their youngest son William had died in 1833, and the eldest, John, in 1838. The London Society of Friends continued to bar Tawell from full membership, despite his continued charitable work. He met a Quaker widow named Mrs. Cutforth, who ran a school in Clerkenwell, and despite the reservations of her friends and family, the couple were married in 1841. Tawell had employed a nurse, Sarah Hart, to look after his first wife. Despite having remarried, he began an affair with her. This secret relationship resulted in 2 children, and Tawell installed all 3 in a cottage in Salt Hill, 1 mile outside of Slough, where he paid £1 per week to maintain them, and was a regular visitor. By now, The previously affluent Tawell was experiencing financial difficulties, mainly due to the failure of his business interests in Australia. One way around this was to get rid of the financial burden of Sarah Hart. On the 1st of January 1845, Tawell went to a chemist shop where he purchased 2 bottles of a brand called Steele's acid. The mixture was used for the treatment of varicose veins and contained prussic acid, which was a poison. He then travelled across London to Paddington Station, where he caught a train to Slough and went to see his lover Hart. He found her in good spirits and gave her the usual allowance for her upkeep. He then went to a local inn and purchased a bottle of porter. Maybe he managed to distract Hart long enough to tip the acid into the newly bought beer. But a short time later, her next-door neighbour heard loud groans and moans through the wall. Around 7 o'clock in the evening, the neighbour, Mary Ann Ashley, saw Tawell, who she recognised as a frequent visitor, leave the house and went to see if Hart was all right. She found her writhing on the floor and foaming at the mouth. Mrs. Ashley quickly raised the alarm, but the victim was dead before a doctor could arrive. She died in agony on the floor. There were 2 glasses on the table. One glass was empty, and the other contained some porter. Those present realised that the woman had been poisoned. Among the people to respond to the cries of help was the Reverend Jamness, the local vicar. The quick-thinking cleric took a description of Tawell and raced to the station to intercept him. He got there just in time to see the suspect board the departing 7:42 p.m. service. He was too late to stop the train, so he alerted the station master, Mr. Howell, who arranged for a message to be sent from the newly installed telegraph machine. The message to Paddington read, "A murder has just been committed at Salt Hill, and the suspect murderer was seen to take a first-class ticket to London by the train that left Slough at 7:42 p.m. He is in the garb of a Quaker, with a brown coat which reaches to his feet. He is in the last compartment of the second first carriage." At Paddington, a clerk ran the message to the Great Western Railway Police Office, where it was passed to the duty Sergeant William Williams, who went to meet the incoming train. A few minutes later, the telegraph at Slough received a message from London which read, "The train has arrived, and a person answering in every respect the description given by the telegraph came out of the compartment mentioned. The man got into a new road omnibus, and Sergeant Williams is following." Tawell was followed by the sergeant along the darkened streets. He first went to a sweet shop in Cornhill, and then on to the Jerusalem Coffee House. The sergeant kept him under observation as he left, and then walked along the road to a lodging house. Williams stood outside the house for over an hour before returning to Paddington. He contacted a colleague, Inspector Wiggins of the Metropolitan Police, at Paddington Green Police Station, and the next morning the 2 men, having confirmed the details of the crime, went in search of the murderer. Tawell was gone from his lodgings, but was located back at the Jerusalem Coffee House, where he was arrested. The suspect protested, saying he had not been in Slough the day before. The trial opened at Aylesbury County Courthouse on the 12th of March 1845, and Tawell's murky past history was revealed. The trial attracted much attention from the public because it was a Quaker who was on trial for murder and who had also kept a mistress. At first, Tawell denied ever being in Slough or knowing Hart. He then finally admitted to knowing her, saying that the wretched woman was in my service for over 2 years. She was a bad woman. She said she would make away with herself if I didn't give her money. When I told her I wouldn't, she threatened to do for herself. She held a small phial over a glass of stout and said, "I will, I will." I told her not to. Then she took the glass and drank from it. She lay down on the rug and I walked out. The post-mortem showed she had consumed over 1 grain of prussic acid, which was a fatal dose. Tawell's defence was handled by Sir Fitzroy Kelly, who tried to make a case that prussic acid that killed Sarah Hart was ingested accidentally from eating the pips of apples, a large barrel of which was in the house. The implausibility of this argument led to the distinguished barrister to be known as Applepip Kelly for the rest of his life. The sale of apples across the country fell dramatically. The jury soon heard how a post-mortem had revealed that the cause of death for 30-year-old Sarah Hart was poisoning by prussic acid. The defence arguments were interesting, but not enough to sway the jury, who found the accused guilty. The judge donned his black cap, and the former convict was, for the second time in his life, sentenced to death. The Crown, who had seized Tawell's English assets, allowed his widow to keep their Berkhamsted home, and following a discussion, Hart's children were placed into care. In Australia, it was discovered that the hall given to the Quakers by Tawell had not been formally gifted, and was subsequently purchased by the Jewish community for use as a synagogue. His estate was held by the governor, but there was considerable argument as to how it should be disposed of, and it took over 16 years for the matter to be resolved. The notoriety of the case brought the remarkable qualities of the Telegraph to the public's attention. Its advantages as a rapid means of conveying intelligence and detecting criminals had been demonstrated, and it was soon adopted on a more extensive scale. The Telegraph, which had received a massive amount of free publicity, was noted in the Times that if it had not been for the efficient aid of the electric telegraph, both at Slough and Paddington, the greatest difficulty as well as delay would have occurred in the apprehension of the suspect. Tawell's case was also significant as the first known murder case where the criminal attempted to flee the scene of the crime by a train, and it was also one of the first cases in which prussic acid was used for a deliberate murder. Other railway companies took on the new system. In 1847, the telegraph was again used in connection with a murder case. A man was under sentence of death at Maidstone Prison when a Home Office message was received at London Bridge Station, asking for a message to be telegraphed to the prison to stop the execution. The message was sent, and the hanging was delayed. Shortly afterwards, the railway received a further message to be sent to Maidstone, authorising the execution to continue. Realising the message was the prisoner's death warrant, an official was sent to confirm that the message was correct, and when this was done, it was duly sent. As for Tawell, his public hanging did not go according to plan on the 28th of March, in the Market Square in Aylesbury, before a crowd of around 8,000 people, as the hanging was botched. He was of slim build, and the hangman did not allow a sufficient drop. Instead of his neck breaking, he took 10 minutes to slowly strangle to death. A cruel but fitting end for the man who murdered Sarah Hart.